Alright folks, you're watching Sergeant Slide's YouTube channel, and this is Stu's Garage. And today, we're going to be working on this V10 Audi R8. And basically what we're going to do, as you can see, we've got the LS over here in the corner. We're going to be LS swapping this car. So currently, it's got a V10 in it. The owner wants to get rid of this motor. It's got way too many cylinders, and it's not very efficient the way that it's set up. So we're gonna get some LS power in here, make this car a little bit better, because I mean, anything can pretty much improve with the power of an LS behind it. So I'm looking forward to that. All right guys, I'm just kidding. We're not gonna be LS swapping this car. We're actually gonna be putting this H&R height adjustable kit on it. And basically that's going to convert the factory suspension into a coilover type suspension. And on a lot of these modern, super sports cars, you do these height adjustable systems because, get out of there, yeah. You do these height adjustable systems because, you might have magnetic ride suspension or different active type suspensions, and you don't want to delete those systems, and it would be way too costly for these companies to reproduce those type of systems. So what you end up with is basically a glorified sleeve kit. I've installed a couple of these. Sometimes they can get pretty complicated to install. Sometimes they're pretty simple to install. If you look back on the channel, you'll see me doing my M6. I don't know, there's a bunch of suspension installs on my YouTube channel. I've done a lot of suspensions at this point, and they're all becoming a blur to me. But anyways, this right here is easily the most exotic, most expensive thing that I've ever touched. And in a minute here, I'm getting ready to take it apart. So let's dive right in. And I guess you guys will go on this journey with me and say a quick prayer for me that we're gonna have successful completion here. Hey, we're not using the jack today. We're not using quick jack. Yeah, let it go. All right, so first things first, we got to get all this trim off, all of this plastic stuff that you see here. Before we jack that up, we're just going to get that stuff off and get that out of the way so that we can expose the suspension components. Here, you want to get started? There you go, take the plastic off. So to start, we're just going to get our flathead screwdriver, and we're going to start popping these little clips out. And these clips are really nice. These are metal clips. Normally you see these things made of plastic, but it's a nice metal part right there. So you're not going to destroy it pulling it out of the car. Over here on the sides next to the hinge, we've got a T27 Torx bit. Alright, next up you have to remove your windshield wipers. Make sure you take note of where your windshield wipers are. First step you do is you go ahead and pop this cap off. There's no special methodology behind that. You're going to undo that nut, and then you can mark it so that you keep it in the same position. Same on that side. Alright, so next up we're going to remove the windshield wipers, and the best way to do that is by pushing down right here and just kind of jiggling it back and forth, and it should come off pretty easily. And then as you can see, I used masking tape on the windshield there to mark the position of the wiper. That way we can get it splined back in the correct location. The last thing that we're going to need to do is remove these hood supports. Some people will remove both of them at the same time, but I think it's a little bit smarter to remove one, then remove the plastic, then put the support back on, and then do the other side. That way you don't have to worry about having something to hold up the hood. And the way you remove that is you just take yourself a rag and put it in between here. That way you're not going to scratch up your materials, and then you can pop that up using a large flathead. There was one more Torx bit hiding up here at the top of the hinge, so that's one here and then one above that, and I think once I get that out, the plastic should come out. And one more last screw, looks like this guy here, and I think, yeah, that's smaller than what we've been using, so that's going to be something else. So let's pull that out, and hopefully that's the last one. Alright, we've got all the plastic trim removed, and it gets really tight right around this area here, just because of the way that it's wedged up underneath this rubber weather gasket. Definitely going to look into the level of effort to remove this tub here as far as installing that stuff back in, because it's going to be difficult to shove that stuff back under there and tuck everything back in the way that it's supposed to be. But we'll address that when the time comes. For now, we're going to go ahead and push forward with getting down to the suspension. Alright guys, so inside of the fender liner, you've got a combination of Torx bit screws, these plastic 10 mil thingies, and even a couple of these little plastic rivet thingies. So there's a lot of them in here. So we're just gonna take our time, get all of these things out, and then there's even some underneath here at the back of the fender liner. Alright guys, we're getting really close to that main course here. So we're down to the strut and the spring. This is only being held in by 2 bolts. As I showed you before, there's the 1 bolt up top, and then there's the 1 bolt down here at the bottom. And there's also the magnetic ride connector here, which is clipped to the side of the firewall, so we have to unclip that. It looks like kind of a U-shaped clip. I'm not 100% sure how to get that out. I think I'm just going to pull it off from the firewall. Something really strange that I've observed down here is this speaker facing the outside of the car. Super curious as to why that is, and if anybody watching knows why that is, definitely leave it in the comments, because this is probably one of the weirdest things I've ever seen OEM on a car. So to access this top bolt that we've got here, we're not going to need to remove anything crazy like I thought earlier. We can just get in here and we can hold this side with a wrench, and we can put the socket on this side, and we can back that thing out of there. Also, a little workflow note for you guys. All the bolts that came out of this fender well are going to be right down here on this side. I want to keep those separate because when I put this whole thing back together, I don't want to miss any screws. So I know that if I have any screws left over here, then something is missing. If I throw them back in with all the rest of the screws, then I may not know if I skip something over. And just on something like this, it's not okay to go missing screws. Alright guys, we got the whole front disassembled, and since this is a view that most folks probably will never see, I just want to take a moment and take it all in. We got the vent box there, so that's probably how you get your HVAC. Got your battery down there. No idea what that module is. We've got your ABS, that's your brake booster, window wiper assembly. Another thing that I don't know what it is. Alright, so for the next step in this particular process, we have to disassemble this assembly in order to put the new spring and sleeve on. In order to make that happen, you have to depin this connector, because otherwise the wire's too fat to take it apart. Great design. So anyways, you want to take note of where the wires are. And you probably can't see it on the camera, but this white wire is going to be number 2, and the black wire is going to be number 1, just in case you happen to get mixed up. And I'm also saying that for my purposes, in case I forget, I can go back and watch this and see where the wires go. On second thought, guys, I'm not depinning this wire. Alright folks, a quick jump forwards. H&R has provided this proprietary tool which holds the shaft of the strut in place, and basically what you got to do is you got to get your spring compressors on here. Shout out to my buddy Steve for loaning me the spring compressor. You're gonna have to wind those things all the way down, and it's just gonna give you enough space to get that tool in there. That tool clamps down on the shaft, and then you can simply spin this bushing by inserting a screwdriver and turning it like such. You also need to put a little bit of lube in here just in case it's seized for any reason. You don't want to tear that wire up, because if you mess that up, there's no way to fix that, being as short as it is. So let's go ahead and pull this guy off. And it's going to go back together the same way. Say what's up, Karen. Karen is the Audi man. So yep, we've got that taken apart. And now we can get the spring off of there. in this process, you will retain the factory, call this a boot for now in case I don't remember the name. You will keep this, and anytime you do a coilover job, you always want to do your best to retain the shock cover, because anytime you have struts, what destroys a strut is when dirt gets on the shaft and it gets inside the strut. Over time that kills it. So you want to keep your dust cover as good as possible. In this process we will also be replacing the factory bump stop with the new H&R bump stops. Alright guys, so what we're running into here is these have these little caps pressed on, and depending on what R8 you have and what year, they can all be different. So if you have the R8 with the non-magnetic ride suspension, this thing is threaded on and it's held on by Loctite. This is, I believe, the Plus model with the magnetic suspension, and it's newer, so the instructions do not show these caps. So what we were able to do, this cap is pressed on, we were able to actually grip this here in the vise and insert a long screwdriver into these mounting holes here and actually get this to twist off. I observed another shop using heat. I didn't want to put heat to these probably $4,000 shocks without trying to twist it at first, but you put a little bit of muscle into it, this cap will come off, and it'll easily press back on there, and probably add a little bit of adhesive just to hold it in place. So now we're back on track. This guy can come off of here, and the new collar, as you can see on the inside, has a little collar on the inside, and this has a collar here. All that goes back together. I'm just showing you guys because you want to wipe all of this stuff down first so you don't mar any surfaces together. But now we've converted our factory strut into a coilover, and it's adjustable just like a coilover. So we're going to get that converted back over, and then we're going to do everything in reverse and put the front of the car back together. Alright guys, so we've got our front struts reassembled fully. All I can say about this install is the most difficult part about this was trying to arrange these spring compressors on here to get the new springs back on. If you have a professional spring compressor, as always, the proper tools always make the job easier. So we're going to go ahead and get these back on the car, and then we're going to try and adjust this height just a little bit. We are going to end up putting the wheels back on and adjusting the height afterwards, because there's no way for me to know what height these things are going to be at. So pretty much the install of this is going to be in the reverse of what you already saw. So you'll see these on the car in just a minute. Alright guys, confession time. I've got the front all finished up. I don't have everything put back together just quite yet, but we had to set the car down to see where it would sit. We got it just in the right place. But I just came to realize that all of that stuff that you saw me take apart up here was completely unnecessary. All we really had to do to get to what we needed was to take out the fender liners in the front. So lesson learned, and don't do that. Don't waste your hours. So anyways, as far as the rear goes, we're going to start out with the fender liner and see what we can access from there. So the rear fender liner is a similar process to the front. It consists of two different size torque bit screws, plastic 10mm nuts, and a few plastic thingies like this. I don't really know what you call them, but these are garbage. Alright, so the view from inside the wheel well, you can see that we should be able to access the top of the strut from down here. It looks like we're going to have to remove this air intake pipe, so there's going to be a Torx bit there, and we'll take a look up top and see what we need to do from there. And then there's a hole through the frame here that Audi was so kind to give us in order to access that bolt, and then it looks like the other side threads directly into the frame. And then down below we've got one single bolt that passes through the control arm, and also on the rear sway bar that we're going to have to remove. And a little tip for you guys, anytime you're taking apart suspension, it's good to do the same axle at the same time versus jacking the car up on one side, because that puts pressure on your sway bar, and it can be very, very difficult to disconnect and reconnect if your car is uneven on the sway bar. Alright, we've got the air tube pulled out, and the way you take that out is basically just unscrew that screw, and you pretty much just yank it out of there. It slides into the other tube. It's not like really an airtight connection. And then up top, unless you want to take all of this stuff apart, you can reach your hand underneath here. You're not going to be able to see it, but the connector is right here, and I've already pulled it out because it's fastened up against the side of here like this. I think there's a rail or something under there, and it's in there with another one of those plastic clips. You just have to pull it out this way, and you'll be able to see just enough of it right here to press the button. It's way better if you have small hands, but I'm gonna get it when I put the camera down. But there's just enough there for you to be able to press down on the clip and release this. Over here on the driver's side, the good folks at Audi were kind enough to put the connector in an accessible location right above the strut. So once you pop the fender liner out, you'll see it hanging around right here. And all you gotta do is push in that clip, which is very difficult to do with gloves, and pull out that connector. All right, so we got the top bolt out. We're working on the lower bolt. And just to show you, there's a little sensor down here that you're gonna have to pop off of this little ball down here. Now I'm not gonna take this all the way out. You shouldn't need to. And this guy is almost ready to come out. All right, with the rear shock assembly removed, we're gonna go ahead and follow the same procedure to break these things down and to get these suspension sleeves set up. One thing to note, on the rear section of this particular setup, you have this ring here, and that can kind of help you to know whether or not you have the front set or the rear set. There's also an R or an F on the spring part number. So we're gonna break this down, deassemble it, and then reassemble it the way that we already know how to do. That's going to conclude this video. So pretty much my final thoughts on this install as far as difficulty goes. I would definitely say that it's a little bit more than an advanced level, and that would be for me going into this thing without very much knowledge on how to do this task and without very good instructions, especially when you talk about putting a $4,000 strut into a vise and removing a pressed on cap. That's a little bit difficult to do, guys. Also, the type of spring compressor that I was using and the way that I had to use that is very difficult and cumbersome. Now that you guys have the video, I would definitely say that trying to complete this job would probably be similar to a spring install on just about any other vehicle. The only thing about spring installs is installing springs is just a lot of work versus doing just a regular coilover set, or something where you can put the entire shock and coil assembly on at once. Disassembling shocks is just a lot of work, guys. But overall, it was fun. The Audi is a great car. I really enjoyed driving it. People enjoyed seeing it, and it was a great opportunity to get to do this work on this car. So thank you guys for watching this video. Definitely leave me any comments. Let me know what you think, and we'll catch you on the next one.